Sometimes when God marks your life, the very first thing he does is separate you. You don't always realize it's happening at first. Starts with small shifts. People you used to laugh with don't understand you anymore. The places that once felt comfortable start to feel tight. And the conversations that used to feed you suddenly feel empty. It's confusing. It's confusing because you're still the same person, but something within you has changed. And that change begins to set you apart. What you're feeling isn't rejection. It's divine isolation. It's not that you've lost your place. It's that God is creating a new space for you. You see, when God chooses someone, he doesn't make the announcement to the world first. He starts the transformation in private. He starts pulling you away from the noise so you can hear his voice more clearly. That's why the chosen ones often feel lonely, because purpose requires clarity, and clarity is born in quiet places. God knows that if he leaves you surrounded by too many voices, you'll start to confuse their opinions for his direction. So he begins to shut doors, shift relationships, and strip away distractions. And it hurts because you don't understand why things that were once so full of life suddenly go silent. But silence is sacred. It's where God speaks the loudest. In the isolation, he begins to show you who you really are. Not who the world told you to be, not who your family expects you to be, but who he designed you to become. That's why isolation is not punishment. It's preparation. He's not cutting you off. He's calling you closer. Some of you have been crying, God, why am I so alone? Why do I feel forgotten? But what if this season of loneliness is the very space where God is revealing your anointing? What if your loneliness isn't evidence of abandonment, but proof of selection? Because when God wants to do something new through you, he separates you to strengthen what's within you. Think about it. Before David ever became king, he was isolated in the field tending sheep. Before Joseph ever wore the robe of royalty, he was locked away in a prison cell. Before Jesus ever stepped into his public ministry, he spent 40 days alone in the wilderness. God has a pattern, separation before elevation. The wilderness, the quiet, the loneliness, it's all part of the divine process. Because if you can handle the silence, if you can stay faithful when nobody sees you, if you can worship when it's just you and God, then you're being prepared to carry something greater when the time comes. Loneliness becomes the classroom where faith matures. In isolation, God begins to detox your spirit from the need for validation. He teaches you that being chosen doesn't always feel chosen. Sometimes it feels forgotten. Sometimes it feels like everybody else is moving ahead while you're standing still. But what you don't see is that while you're standing still, God is planting something deep within you that will sustain you later. You're not being delayed. You're being developed. There are moments when it feels unfair. You watch people who don't even seek God seem to have it easier. They have company, applause, and open doors. And here you are, trying to stay faithful yet walking alone. But that's because your journey is different. God has to isolate you because he's building intimacy, not image. He's not just blessing you for a season. He's preparing you for a lifetime assignment. He's creating a foundation that won't crumble when storms come, because chosen ones don't just survive storms. They carry others through them. And to do that, you have to first learn how to stand with God when no one else stands with you. In this season, it might feel like you're losing everything familiar. People comfort, certainty, but that's because God is detaching you from what's temporary to attach you to what's eternal. He's not removing things to leave you empty. He's making space for what's coming. Every chosen one must go through that sacred season where God says, I need you to myself for a while, because when he finally releases you back into the world, you'll no longer be defined by the world's noise. You'll be anchored by heaven's voice. So if you're feeling lonely right now, don't rush to fill the silence. Let it shape you. Let it teach you. Let it draw you deeper into God's presence. Because this is where the oil flows, not in the crowd, but in the quiet. This is where character is formed, vision is sharpened, and faith becomes unshakable. Isolation is the womb of transformation. You may not see it yet, but something powerful is being birthed inside of you. You're not being left out. You're being set apart. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when it feels like everything is falling apart. The plans you made crumble. The relationships you thought were solid start to dissolve, and the ground beneath your feet begins to shake. It feels like life is breaking you, and you start to wonder if you did something wrong, if you missed a sign, or if maybe you're just not strong enough. But what if the breaking isn't meant to destroy you? What if the breaking is meant to birth something within you that could never emerge while everything was still perfect and put together? Because God doesn't waste pain. He uses it as the pressure that produces purpose. There are seasons where God allows everything comfortable to be disrupted, not because he wants you to suffer, but because he knows that growth can't happen in comfort. You can't carry the weight of a new calling with the strength of an old version of yourself. So he allows the breaking not to punish you, to prepare you. When you're chosen, you don't get to skip the breaking process, because the breaking is what gives you authenticity. It's what gives your voice power, your faith depth, and your spirit compassion. Without the breaking, you would never know what it feels like to depend on God for every breath. The truth is, God does some of his best work in brokenness. When your plans fall apart, when your heart shatters, when you have nothing left to prove or pretend, that's where he begins to build you from the inside out. Because when he breaks you, he's not trying to take away your value. He's trying to reveal it. Like a seed that must be broken open before life can emerge, you too must go through the cracking for purpose to come forth. Shell of who you were has to give way to the person you're becoming, and that process isn't pretty. It's raw, it's painful, and it's confusing, but it's holy because God is in it. Maybe you've been in a season where you can't stop crying, where every prayer feels unanswered, and where your heart feels too heavy to carry. You're wondering why the more you pray, the more things seem to break. But what if God is saying, I have to break what you've built because it's too small for what I'm trying to give you? Sometimes we hold on to things that were never meant to hold the weight of our destiny. We cling to people, jobs, habits, and places that served a version of us that no longer exists. God steps in and begins to dismantle what you've been depending on. It's not cruelty. It's construction. He's tearing down the old foundation so he can rebuild something stronger. When you're chosen, the breaking often feels personal. It hits the parts of your life you care about most, your relationships, your identity, your sense of control. But that's because God breaks you in the area he plans to use you. If your heart breaks deeply, it's because you're called to heal deeply. If you've been broken by rejection, It's because you're called to show others their worth. The pain you experience becomes the very tool God uses to reach people through you. That's why your story matters, because it's the evidence of what survived the breaking. In the breaking, you discover that God doesn't just fix what's broken. He transforms it. He takes the pieces that don't make sense and arranges them into something beautiful, something that reflects His glory. The cracks in your life become the places where His light shines through. And even though you may feel shattered, you're actually being reshaped. You're learning how to trust again, how to believe again, how to love again. But this time, not from your own strength, but from His. It's easy to praise God when everything's going right, but true worship is born in the breaking. It's in those nights when your heart aches and you still lift your hands. It's in those moments when you say, God, I don't understand, but I still trust you. That's where real faith is forged. That's where your spirit learns that joy isn't dependent on circumstances, but rooted in the presence of the one who never leaves you, even when everything else does. And when the breaking is over, you'll realize something powerful. You didn't lose yourself in the process. You found yourself. The version of you that walks out of this will not be the same one who walked in. You'll have a deeper peace, a quieter strength, and a faith that doesn't shake when the world does. Because once you've been broken by God and rebuilt by His love, nothing can take that away from you. So if your world feels like it's falling apart right now, don't assume it's the end. It might just be the beginning of something new. Because sometimes God allows the breaking not to destroy what's in your life, but to release what's been trapped inside of you all along. And when He's done, you'll look back and realize that the breaking wasn't your burial, it was your birth. There are moments in life when the sting of rejection cuts deeper than we ever expected. You prayed for that opportunity. You showed up with faith. You gave your heart to that relationship, and still, it ended with a closed door. You stood there wondering what went wrong, asking God why He would let you get that close only to have it slip away. And in those moments, rejection feels like a wound that won't stop bleeding. It feels unfair. It feels confusing. And it feels personal. But what if that rejection was never meant to break you, but to redirect you? What if what you thought was a loss was actually God's way of guiding you to something greater than you could see? When God has chosen you, He doesn't always reveal His protection as comfort. Sometimes He reveals it as a no. And it's not because you're unworthy. It's because He knows what's ahead. You only see the door in front of you, but God sees what's behind it. He sees what you can't handle, what would hurt you, or what would distract you from your purpose. So when He closes a door, it's not to keep you out, it's to keep you safe. That rejection wasn't rejection, it was divine redirection. It was God saying, I have something better, something purer, something prepared just for you. But the thing about divine redirection is that it rarely feels divine in the moment. It feels like failure. It feels like being overlooked. It feels like you gave your all and it still wasn't enough. And that's the part that breaks us. Because we equate rejection with our worth, not realizing that sometimes God allows rejection to preserve it. If every yes came easy, we'd settle in places beneath our potential. But rejection stretches you. It forces you to seek God for clarity, to lean on Him for direction, and to trust that even when you don't understand, He's still ordering your steps. Think about how many times in your life you've wanted something that didn't work out. And later, You were grateful it didn't. The job you thought you needed, the person you thought you couldn't live without, the plan that fell apart. In hindsight, you can see that God was protecting you. He was moving pieces you couldn't see, aligning things you didn't know you needed. Sometimes his redirection doesn't make sense until much later, but that doesn't make it any less intentional. There are some places you were never meant to stay, no matter how good they felt at the time. Some people were never meant to go with you to the next level, no matter how much you love them. Opportunities were never yours, no matter how hard you tried to make them fit. When God chooses you, he chooses your path too. And that means he'll remove anything that's not aligned with your purpose, even if it breaks your heart in the process. Because your destiny is too important to be delayed by distractions disguised as blessings. Rejection is not God withholding something from you. God making room for something that fits who you're becoming. When you're chosen, he won't let you settle in comfort zones that will stunt your growth. You might beg him to let you stay, but he loves you too much to let you shrink into spaces you've outgrown. So instead of asking, why did they leave? Or why didn't it work out? Maybe the better question is, God, what are you making room for? Because something new always follows a divine no. And I know it hurts. I know it's hard to see purpose in pain. It's hard to thank God for a door that slammed in your face. But one day, you'll look back and see that every rejection was really a redirection, a gentle hand turning you toward the path that leads to your destiny. You'll realize that the heartbreak that almost broke you was the very thing that freed you. Because if you had gotten what you wanted back then, you would have settled for less than what God had planned. Rejection refines your discernment. It teaches you not to chase what isn't yours, not to force what doesn't fit, and not to beg for what God has already released. It shows you how to trust his timing, even when your heart is tired. And it reminds you that being chosen doesn't mean every door will open. It means every door that does open will lead you closer to his will. So the next time you face rejection, pause before you label it as loss. Breathe and remember that maybe this isn't the end of your story, but the redirection toward your real beginning. God doesn't take without purpose. He removes to replace, he blocks to protect, and he redirects to align you with the promise he's already prepared. What you thought was rejection was simply his way of saying, I love you too much to let you settle. Because when you're chosen, rejection isn't your downfall. It's your detour to destiny. There's a weight that comes with being chosen, not just the weight of responsibility, but the weight of pain. Because when God sets you apart, he doesn't just anoint your gifts, he also anoints your wounds. The things you've gone through, the tears you've cried, the heartbreak you've carried, they're not meaningless. Every painful moment, every silent night, every disappointment was shaping something inside of you that comfort could never produce. Pain has a way of revealing purpose, even when it feels like it's destroying you. You see, we often think God only moves in blessings, breakthroughs, in answered prayers. But sometimes he moves in broken places. He speaks in the ache, he shapes in the struggle, and he uses pain as the language that refines purpose. Because there are some lessons you can't learn through ease, only through endurance. There are depths of compassion, strength, and faith that can only be formed in fire. And when you're chosen, that fire burns differently. It doesn't come to consume you. It comes to purify what's been planted within you. There are moments when you ask God, why me? Why does it seem like I have to fight harder, cry longer, wait deeper? But what you don't see is that your pain is producing something eternal. God is using what hurt you to heal others. He's using what broke you to build wisdom. He's using what you lost to help you lead. That's why your pain can't be wasted. It's divine material in His hands. When you survive what should have destroyed you, you become evidence that God is real. You become a living testimony that grace can rebuild what life tried to tear apart. Sometimes your greatest anointing will come from your greatest agony. You think you're just trying to survive, but in reality, God is shaping a story that will set someone else free. That's why the chosen often carry deep emotional and spiritual battles, because your purpose is connected to deliverance. The depth of what you've walked through determines the depth of what you can carry. God trusts you with pain because He knows He can trust you to turn it into power. And I know that doesn't always feel comforting in the middle of it. When your heart is breaking and your prayers seem unanswered, you don't want to hear about purpose. You just want relief. Even in those moments when you can't trace His hand, you can trust His heart, because God doesn't allow pain without purpose. Every tear you've cried is counted. Every night you've laid awake wondering when it will get better is seen. And every time you've chosen to believe again after being disappointed, heaven noticed. You're not suffering in vain. You're being strengthened in secret. The chosen ones often carry pain because God is shaping their empathy. You can't comfort others until you've known what it feels like to need comfort yourself. You can't speak life into someone's brokenness until you've learned how to breathe again through your own. Pain makes you tender where life could have made you hard. It gives you vision that can see beyond people's smiles into their struggles. It gives you a heart that doesn't just pray for people, it feels for them. And that kind of heart is rare. It's what God builds in those He calls. Pain also has a way of pruning your perspective. It teaches you to stop depending on people for validation and start depending on God for direction. It shifts your focus from what you lost to what He's still building. You start realizing that maybe the pain wasn't meant to end you, but to elevate you. Maybe it wasn't punishment, positioning, because sometimes God will break your heart to save your soul. He'll allow you to lose what you wanted so He can give you what you need. If you look back over your life, you'll see it. The places where pain pushed you closer to God, where loss taught you gratitude, where heartbreak birthed healing. Every painful chapter was a setup for your next level of purpose. You might not have seen it then, but now you can recognize that what felt like the end was actually the beginning of something new. That's the beauty of being chosen. God doesn't let your pain be wasted. He turns every scar into strategy. So if you're in a season of pain right now, know this, it's not permanent, but it is purposeful. What feels like breaking is actually building. What feels like loss is actually layering strength within you. And one day you'll look back and realize that God didn't just bring you through it. He made you stronger because of it. Because purpose isn't born in perfection. It's born in pressure. And the pain that once made you question everything will one day become the proof that you were chosen for something greater. Your pain has purpose. There's something about being chosen that attracts warfare. The moment you step into who God called you to be, you start to notice the pressure intensify. Things that used to come easy suddenly become complicated. People who once supported you begin to misunderstand you. Doors that looked open start to close, and you can't help but wonder, Why is this happening to me? But the truth is, spiritual warfare is not a sign that you're off track. It's proof that you're on the right one. The enemy doesn't fight what doesn't threaten him. The reason the attacks feel so heavy is because your destiny carries weight. You see, when you carry divine purpose, you also carry divine opposition. The enemy sees the light on your life, even when you can't. He knows your potential before you fully recognize it. That's why he works overtime to distract, discourage, and drain you. His goal isn't just to make you suffer. It's to make you stop believing. Because if he can get you to give up on your assignment, he doesn't have to fight your destiny. You'll forfeit it yourself. That's why the chosen often go through seasons of intense warfare. The calling on your life made you a target, but it also made you untouchable in God's timing. Spiritual warfare doesn't always look like chaos around you. Sometimes it's chaos within you. It's that inner conflict between faith and fear, peace and panic, calling and comfort. It's the moments where you feel torn between who you used to be and who God is calling you to become. And it's in that tension that the battle becomes real. You start questioning everything, your worth, your calling, even God's promises. But that's exactly where growth begins. Because in those moments, you're not just fighting the enemy. You're fighting the parts of yourself that doubt what God said. There's a reason why the chosen can't walk through life casually. You can't move like everyone else because what's on your life requires a different level of awareness. When others are sleeping, you're up praying. When others are comfortable, you're being stretched. When others are celebrating, you're fighting unseen battles just to stay standing. It's not because you're cursed. It's because you're chosen. God has trusted you with a purpose that demands spiritual strength, and that strength is built through warfare. Every attack that tried to break you was secretly training you. Every time you had to fight through tears and keep showing up anyway, you were being sharpened. You were being equipped. The chosen ones learn that not every battle is meant to be avoided. Battles are meant to be endured because they build endurance. Some storms are not there to destroy you. They're there to reveal what's inside of you. When you're chosen, even your warfare becomes prophetic. The intensity of the attack often matches the magnitude of the assignment. So if the fight feels personal, it's because the calling is powerful. The enemy doesn't attack people who aren't carrying impact. He goes after the ones who are destined to shift atmospheres, break generational curses, and bring light into dark places. But here's the truth. The fight may be fierce, but you're not fighting alone. Every time the enemy comes against you, he forgets that God has already gone before you. You are not just surrounded by struggle, you are surrounded by strength. Angels have been assigned to your name. Protection has been spoken over your purpose. And no matter how loud the battle gets, the victory is still yours because the one who called you is still in control. Sometimes the warfare doesn't stop right away because God is still teaching you how to use your weapons. He's showing you how to pray with authority, how to speak life when everything around you looks dead, how to declare peace when chaos is all you see. He's strengthening your discernment, helping you recognize when to fight and when to rest, because not every battle deserves your energy. Some things you win not by swinging back, but by standing still and letting God fight for you. That's what it means to be chosen, to trust that even when the battle rages, you're covered by divine strategy. The truth is, spiritual warfare reveals identity. It's in the fight that you discover who you really are. You start realizing that you're just stronger than you thought, that your faith is deeper than you imagined, and that the God who called you is greater than anything against you. And once you realize that, the attacks lose their power. The same fire that tried to consume you ends up refining you. You walk differently, you pray differently, you speak differently, because you've seen too much of God's faithfulness to ever doubt his protection again. So if you're in the middle of a battle right now, if you feel like you've been fighting nonstop just to stay afloat, remember this: the warfare is not random. It's targeted because your life carries impact. The enemy only fights what he fears, and he fears what you're becoming. So don't give up, don't back down, and don't lose faith. This battle isn't proof that you're weak. It's evidence thence that you're chosen. Spiritual warfare is not a sign that you're losing. It's a reminder that you're destined to win. There's something sacred about solitude, that quiet space where it's just you and God. It's not a place most people like to stay for long because silence can feel uncomfortable. When you're alone, the noise of the world fades, and suddenly you're face to face with yourself, with your fears, your doubts, your questions, and your faith. That's exactly where God does his best work. When you're chosen, God will often lead you into seasons of solitude, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because before he reveals you publicly, he strengthens you privately. Before he gives you influence, he gives you intimacy. Loneliness is not the same as being alone. Loneliness is a feeling, but solitude is a strategy. God uses solitude to develop spiritual muscle, to make sure that your foundation is built on something unshakable. He removes the noise so you can learn the sound of his voice. He allows silence so you can rediscover your strength. It's in those quiet seasons when nobody is clapping and nobody is calling that you find out what you're really made of. There, in that stillness, that God starts to reveal who he's been shaping all along. Sometimes we think God has forgotten us because everything goes quiet. The phone stops ringing, opportunities stop coming, and prayers seem unanswered. But God's silence doesn't mean his absence. In fact, his silence often means he's working. He's not ignoring you. He's insulating you. He's setting you apart so he can pour into you without distraction. Because if he let you move too soon, you'd mistake noise for growth. You'd think activity equals progress, when really he's more interested in your alignment than your advancement. God hides you to protect the version of you that's still becoming. When you're chosen, solitude becomes your training ground. It's where you learn to stop depending on applause and start depending on anointing. It's where you discover that peace isn't found in people. It's found in presence. You start realizing that you don't need everyone to understand your process because your process wasn't designed for everyone. God custom built this season for your growth. Every quiet night, every unanswered text, every door that stayed closed, it's all part of the lesson. He's teaching you how to trust him without evidence, how to stay still when everything in you wants to move, and how to keep believing when nothing seems to be happening. It's not easy though. Solitude can feel like abandonment at first. You start wondering why God took certain people out of your life, why opportunities dried up, why everything familiar suddenly shifted. But what if God didn't take it away to hurt you? What if he took it away to heal you? What if he's removing everything that was keeping you from hearing his voice clearly? Sometimes God will strip you of what you thought you needed to show you that he's all you've ever needed. And once you experience that kind of dependence, you walk differently, you pray differently. You stop panicking when people leave because you know the one who stays. When God isolates you, he's not trying to make you invisible. He's trying to make you unshakable. He's developing strength that doesn't come from success, but from surrender. The chosen ones learn how to sit in silence without losing faith. They learn how to worship when there's no music, how to praise when there's no crowd, and how to stand when no one's watching. Because when your strength is built in solitude, no storm can shake it. When your confidence comes from God, no rejection can destroy it. In solitude, you begin to recognize that what looked like separation was actually protection. The friends who drifted away, the relationships that ended, the spaces that closed, they all made room for peace. They all gave God space to breathe life into areas that were once buried under busyness. And once you start to see solitude as sacred, you stop rushing to escape it. You start valuing it. You start realizing that this is where oil is formed, in the crushing, in the quiet, in the unseen. You can't pour out what you haven't received. And solitude is where God fills you up again. And when he finally brings you out of that quiet season, you come out different. You come out steady. You come out sure. The same things that used to shake you don't move you anymore because you've been anchored in something deeper. You don't seek validation like you used to because solitude taught you who you are when nobody's watching. You've learned that God's presence is enough, that being seen by him is more valuable than being celebrated by people. So if you're in that season right now, that quiet, lonely, uncertain season, don't despise it. Don't rush through it. Let God finish what he started in you. This is the season where he's building your foundation, where he's teaching you to stand on his word and not on the world. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's necessary because the strength that's built in solitude will carry you through every storm that comes next. God is building strength in your solitude.